So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Roberta Lepre, and I will be your moderator for the next hour or so. This is the latest in a series of events titled 859 Club, organized by the IoD Malta in its effort to reach out and support its members, but also the broader business community. Not only now, within these very challenging circumstances, but also before, and hopefully we can go ahead together once this situation is somehow overcome. Today, to participate in this discussion, we have an amazing panel of guests. I am sure they need very little introduction. I'm sure that they are familiar to many of you. We have with us Antoniette Caruana. Antoniette is currently Company Secretary and Group HR Manager of the Parsons Group. Welcome, Antoniette.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Antoniette, you have served on many boards, both private, public, and non-profit. And I look forward very much to hearing your insights going forward to share with us and with our guests. Likewise, we have Mrs. Helga Ellul, also very much a familiar face. Welcome, Helga. Helga is perhaps mostly known, I would say, due to having served as CEO of Playmobil for many years. Since then, Helga has set up her own advisory firm, Advise Limited, and you are currently also serving as chairperson of Core Platform, Helga, which is a voluntary organization under the patronage of Her Excellency. So welcome to you, Helga. And then last, but certainly not least, we have Catherine Halpin. Catherine is an engineer by profession. Her background is in electricity generation and major projects, and in fact it was this experience that first brought her to Malta around 6 years ago. Catherine is currently CEO of the Quad Limited and also an advisory board member of Cleantech 360, and also consults from time to time in electricity generation and clean energy. So welcome to all of you and welcome to our participants. I'm going to start with, let's say, addressing the tough points, the challenges. You are obviously all aware, and I assume we're all in agreement that these are unprecedented times for all of us. And we are having to face challenges which possibly we have never had to face before. But if I had to ask you, what are your most pressing and imminent challenges that you are currently facing as a business, but also as a professional? Maybe we can start with you, Antoniette.
Sure. I think even in this very unprecedented period, as you've rightly said, Roberta, the situation is also changing. Looking back to 6-7 weeks ago and living the current circumstances, I feel a change. Perhaps in my role both as HR, so being close to the business and also close to the people, and also in the role as director. Looking back 6-7 weeks ago, obviously this change came about we were totally unaware, unprepared for that. So there was a lot of immediate, quick action that needed to be taken. A lot of decisions taken in a much shorter time than we would normally have had to take them. I think that was a huge learning point. And they worked, and it worked, and great cooperation, and to a certain extent, great enthusiasm. Throughout the period, obviously, and still ongoing, there are different circumstances. The business and the company I work for has been severely, significantly impacted. So with serious repercussions on not only on the way we do business and on our results, but also on our people. It is also changing the norm. Obviously, we have to think differently, and I definitely will speak more about that. But another thing that it's also meant, obviously, even more discussions with the unions where they're present, all of that. But one of the things that I've really recognizing in this past couple of weeks, and I think will happen more, is that even people are becoming more fatigued, more weary, more worried in certain cases. Obviously, they're worried about the situation, they're worried about health, they're worried about their money, and sometimes, and they're looking for something positive. I think some of the initial enthusiasm of we can do this and we can do it together is wearing off a bit, and there's more concern because they see the long term. So here we have a role even as management, as directors, obviously, to be able to create, to look at strategies, communication, etc. So I think even that is changing.
Catherine, you come from a totally different sector, but how much do you relate to what Antoniette is saying, or is your experience any different?
No, I agree fully with everything that she said, and I think it's great having somebody with the HR background and that focus, because a lot of this is about the people, and the people, no matter what your industry is, your people are your greatest asset, you know. And this is tough on everybody. I mean, for us, we're in construction, so it's cash. Cash is the most important number one thing at the moment. Things have changed. We have been looking a lot at like our supply chain, because it is, you know, making sure that all of the contractors and all of the contracts and all of the supply chain logistics are working and getting through to Malta. We have a lot of stuff coming from Italy, from Spain, from countries that were locked down. So you're looking at things like, you know, alternative supply, stocks, those become very important very quickly. And I would like to say, I mean, you know, again, back to the staff, we have, I think, done, like, there was weeks where we did a different scenario every day. And so it's just been churning out more and more and more numbers. What if? Every email for about a week was, what if? And I think, so that's been quite a difficult thing to get through. We're fortunate enough, I think, that, you know, we didn't get massively impacted, but we certainly put in place a huge amount of contingency planning over the last few weeks.
Helga, you sit on various boards, so maybe you have a bit of a broader view. Would you?
I mean, mainly, Roberta, my experience, which is on the retail side, and similar to what Antoniette said and Catherine, first it was a shock. I mean, sort of, and it was financially mainly because we shut down totally. So the financial pressure and the cash flow and the people. These were sort of the immediate issues we had to solve, but it's changing every day. And I think what is for me still coming out is this uncertainty that nobody knows really and can plan. So, I mean, daily you are sort of seeing what is the new way forward, what is the new business model, because there is nowhere where you can sort of go back and say, this has happened and we have done it like that. It's so unpredictable. And I think what I'm feeling more than, I mean, like Antoniette said as well, now people are getting a bit worried, quite worried financially, individually, the employees, but even the business owners. I mean, with their uncertainty, what is the new business model? Where do we have to go? I think it's still leaving people now quite a bit tired, worried about the future. And we need sort of a bit more positiveness coming out, because in a way, one needs to see that every challenge and something like that has as well opportunities. And one needs to sort of get a mindset now to look as well at the opportunities out of this crisis. But it's very difficult, to be honest.
It is. Antoniette, earlier you alluded to the need to take quick decisions, and I presume perhaps this would have also impacted to a certain extent the usual dynamic between the board of directors and the executive management, the CEO and the broader management team. Do you feel that this COVID situation has in fact changed this dynamic, or shed light on the need to improve this dynamic?
I think there has been impact. Obviously, each organization has its own experience and its own setup and the ways of working even with the board. Definitely at the organization that I work with, there has been much more interaction with the board, and specifically with some directors perhaps who have had more experience or can offer more time or whatever. Not everyone the same, but there has been more input as well, especially at a time when you're trying to finalize results and trying to do audits online. It's a completely different scenario. Obviously, I think a number of us have passed through that. With other organizations, the board, it's how the whole crisis has impact. If the crisis has had less impact, perhaps in some industries, the board may be less involved, but it doesn't mean they're not monitoring or they're not communicating. What has been critical, I think, is as well, one, the communication that also flows between the board and goes to the people, so the people can be reassured, and the ongoing and with other stakeholders as well. I think there's been much more communication, and that really has been critical and needs to continue all the time. Obviously, the relationships between the CEO and the board becomes even more critical at this point in time. I think it can make or break. In most cases, I think it has, at least where I've been experienced, it's helped so much where the relationship is good. I think that is really critical. Regarding the agility in decision making, I mean, what's really surprised me is, how we had quite a tough situation initially because one of our senior managers had tested positive and discovered after a week when he had been at home, but a number of us had meetings with him for hours the day, previously. So a lot of us ended up in quarantine, and we were all okay, thank God. But it meant that all senior managers were working from home, including our chairman, including everyone. So that taught us a lot of things, and I was so surprised, and we were also pleased at the possibility of managing remotely, which I think we would probably have been very reluctant to take the decision in other times. And also the agility of adapting to new practices, Skype, Zoom, Teams, and managing through that. So I think it taught me a lot about adaptability even more, and reinforced the importance of flexibility.
Catherine, you're a CEO. Going back to my original question to Antoniette about the dynamic between the CEO and the board. Do you share this experience? Do you feel that there was more, let's say, thirst for direction from the board of directors by the management team?
Yeah, I think there's been a huge thirst. It's a two-way communication stream, and there's a thirst in both directions. The board really need information. They're like sucking information as quickly as they can get it. And that information needs to be reliable. You need to stand over every single iteration of every single set of financials you're producing. And then equally, you do need that backup, because there is no blueprint. You can't open a textbook on this. What it does, I think, there's a couple of interesting things that I'm observing as CEO. Obviously, I'm asking for more. I'm also aware I'm in a fishbowl and people are looking at me and at my response. So how I walk around on site, that actually has an impact. The messages I'm giving out to my contractors, that I had people on the phone, is it going ahead? Is it, and you have to, there's a lot of reassurance and a lot of hard work and a lot of pushing and looking around corners and behind furniture for every different type of idea that we can come up with. But I do think as well, when it comes to the board and the board interaction, I think now is a very, very good time to look at the board configuration. Does it have the experience in this last few weeks? Has the board had the knowledge and experience within itself? Is everybody pulling their weight equally? And this is a tough thing. I mean, this is not easy for a bunch of people to look within their own group and really analyze without getting emotional, without, you know, and allowing these hard questions to be asked. Did we perform? Are we performing? Do we, you know, it's like a 3-stage process. The first thing is like, you know, stop the bleeding, like make sure we can hang on. The second stage is floating in this kind of interim stage. And the third is the strategy for the future. So there's 3 phases, and you won't get to stage 3 if you didn't manage stage 1 and stage 2. And if you're so busy with stage 1 and stage 2, you're never going to survive stage 3 because it needs thinking. And that's where the board really needs to put a huge amount of effort in. So it's not anything new, it's just more intense. And we need the board more.
Yes, yes, indeed. Helga, we've spoken about adaptability, agility, the need to change fast, the need to take quick decisions. But have people accepted or started accepting that things are changing for good, or are directors and managers waiting and hoping for things to go back to what they were?
No, not really. I mean, there has been big changes, like we have heard from Antoniette and Catherine. I mean, I see as well where I'm on the boards or chairing boards where before you had your once-a-month meeting and it was more on strategy. The CEO had his budget, had his business plan. Now all of a sudden it's changed, and there is a very almost, I would say, 2-3 times weekly meetings, and the board is involved in it because obviously the CEO needs the involvement of the board and the guidance of the board. Plus the directors are knowing that they have to give now the CEO much more help in the way forward. Also, the directors are much more willing to support the CEO with the people in the organization and be upfront together with the CEO and give it. We all know it's not going to go back to what it was before. The only problem is that we don't know the new. So we are still trying
this famous new normal that everybody's talking about, right?
That's the way. Nobody knows the new normal, what it will be, because it will, like we saw now, the big changes that everything was done remotely. It will not remain either like that. So there will be a balance, I think, but it will not go back to what it was before. We have learned now that a lot can be done from home, and there can be far more flexibility, something which we always before were trying to encourage really, but it was difficult. All of a sudden we realized how quickly it can be done, and to a certain extent where it can be very effective. But then we realized as well that we still need the human contact too. So I think we will need to find a balance on the way forward. But also the attitude of the consumers is changing totally, because they had to change, going far more on online. So the whole online thing will remain a bigger part, which brings the technology in. So a lot of the new way forwards will be technology driven, and companies have to be, I think, ready for that, and knowing they have to invest much more into the new technologies. So the thing is still, like I said before, a lot of uncertainty. Nobody is yet sure the way forward, how it will be, really.
Catherine, what do you envisage this new normal to look like? Do you share Helga's views, or do you have other forecasts?
No, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Like, what is the view? The blueprint is yet to be written. What I mean, on the positive side, I think human beings, we're very innovative, we're very creative. And if you look around what we have created, you know, so far, we are going to create and we will innovate. We're not kind of just, you know, brain dead process monkeys. And if we are, then, you know, we won't be in the, we won't get out of this. So there will be a future. I mean, we're constructing office blocks. So we're obviously keeping a really close eye internationally and locally on what is the feeling. And like what Helga said, I mean, yeah, we have seen a huge amount of flexibility, but ultimately, you know, managing an existing relationship has been easy. Can we see the introduction of new, really good new business relationships without any physical meetings? I don't know. Can we handle kids at home all the time for the rest of our lives? Maybe, I don't know. So it's not exactly, it's not utopia either. So I do think there will be a balance. I think that the technology aspect is something we all need to look at with people working from home. Have we got the right kind of controls? Are our governance controls still operating properly? So for me, I'm quite interested to see what opportunities present themselves. I think there will be some semblance of the old. I do think Helga's right. Some things like shopping will go far more online. We'll wait and see, but I do think humans are creative, and I think we're innovative, and I think we will create. And we've got to decide what the new normal we want is as well. You know, we've got a planet that we need to protect, and I think a lot of what we were doing wasn't sustainable in the long term. So let's hope that we innovate in the right direction.
Antoinette, what is your forecast for the new normal? And I think Catherine also made an interesting point in the sense as to what is our role in shaping this new normal going to be. To what extent is it up to us to shape it? I
find myself in agreement with many of the thoughts and opinions expressed by both Helga and Catherine. I would like to think that we can help shape the new norm, and I think we should be able to do that. If anything, the skills and the competencies for creativity and innovation, which we've spoken about for years and years, are now even more at the forefront and need to be done and need perhaps to be encouraged. I was sharing something that even in leadership today, it is much more about creating a sense of purpose, because we even need to look at that, you know, the sense of purpose in the organization, looking at how we can further support our people, empower them, because they also need to be involved in this decision. What kind of future? If I look at the people, I'll go into the business in a minute, but if I look at the people, even as Catherine mentioned, I mean, initially we had a lot of excitement because people were working at home, even young mothers who were also balancing the household, work, children, vulnerable parents and relatives. It has been exhausting for them, and we have many of these young mothers, you know, even in some instances, I have to say, even fathers who have opted to take
yes, of course,
but who are really looking forward to coming back to the workplace as soon as possible, but they can't because they have issues with who's going to look after their children, just as an example, that is. Obviously, there have been benefits that we've seen, and I don't think that we should take them lightly. Perhaps we can speak about that later. The environment, people are aware, the traffic, so many other things, you know, but people don't like the isolation so much. I mean, that has now become more and more evident, at least. I mean, I enjoy coming to work much quicker in the mornings and not having to worry about what kind of traffic, if I'm going to be late for a meeting or whatever, and doing my meetings online. I do myself, you know, miss some the social interaction and the networking, which is not quite the same. With regards to the business, I mean, we are, if I look at the current business, let me stop on that for the time being. Definitely, things are going to change. There are good things that we've had in the not so recent past, which we need to keep going. But definitely online shopping, we're very much involved there. Delivery, take home, huge impact. We also need to support the people, our stakeholders whom we work with. I mean, Catherine mentioned the cash issues. It's very evident in the market, you know, and this is where relationships, trust, finding a way together in this very difficult time. It is a very big issue, I think, for a lot of people. We definitely feel it as well. So we need to find ways of working, and it's not only the large organizations here; it's the smaller companies, you know, who might even have more issues than others. So definitely, there is that need, definitely a more need for lobbying, networking together, and trying to find, to plan the new norm. The last point I'd like to mention is, because I feel there was a lot of efforts and a lot said initially, and seems to be a bit dying out now. But people have spoken a lot, various people, about us discovering balance, life, values, you know, and I hope that that discussion continues, because it has helped us to find again, I think what can be very important. Obviously, the economy is key, and we are all focused on that. But it's also important to try and find those values which could make a difference in life ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we see things happening which worry you a bit, you know, whether it was just all talk, and you know.
I think this is a very interesting point, Antoniette. You know, my approach and my philosophy of business. So I do share your views that the economy is extremely important, but it's not the only measure of well-being. And we should perhaps use this opportunity to start focusing more on well-being rather than just economic growth. So I definitely share that. A question that has been posed, which also relates to the various observations that have been made in relation to remote working and the extent to which we're going to retain remote working. Do you feel this might, to a certain extent, have a negative impact on demand for real estate, especially in the commercial space? I don't know, maybe Catherine?
Yeah, I can take that one. It's a mixed bag, and it's very early to say. So if you look at Times of Malta today, the estate agents are saying, look, there hasn't been that much of an impact on prices, and it looks like there's still a market there. Certainly, we are still seeing interest in our development in Imriho. What I think is going to be the key, and it should always be the key, but maybe the pandemic might, you know, put a focus on it. Equality begets quality. And if you have quality and if you plan for quality, it will always stand to you. So, you know, things like where we are in the quad business towers, we're doing LEED Platinum. So it's already the highest level of sustainability. So you're already dealing with, you know, not having a huge density of people in the office, having large amounts of fresh air, large amounts of, you know, the movement within the buildings, the lifts, the amount of lifts that are available. So if you've already set that goalpost up there, you're probably going to be better placed. So I think that's what's going to happen. People will be looking at every side of every euro, and they're going to look for what they need in the future, which is going to be an awful lot more to do with the cleanliness and the safety of their staff. So I think, does it impact? It's too early to tell, because the other thing about it is that Malta is, I mean, we're inextricably linked to the financial services, the gaming industry, so that the whole larger governance discussion and attractiveness of Malta as a destination, you know, the tourism industry, even people coming to Malta, hearing about Malta, knowing about Malta. So no one industry is actually independent of any other.
No, that's very true. Very true. Helga, do you feel that our existing business model, or let's say the most prevalent business models, are they adequate to cater for this new normal scenario?
I don't really think. And to be honest to you, Roberta, I'm as well a bit skeptical. I mean, it came as a shock, and everybody is now talking about, the impact as well on environment and the future and the work balance and values. But knowing people quickly forget.
Yeah.
Change is never welcome. People like their old ways. And I'm a bit skeptical. I hope that the good thing out of this whole crisis, that some of the lessons we learned will actually be taken on board. I hope, because I think some good has to come out of this crisis, and we should take that on. But I think it will again be not the norm. It will be the entrepreneurs who are thinking ahead of the future and will be the ones who actually will come strong out of it, who will take on board these lessons learned from the crisis and put them in the new model. Like we said as well, with working remotely, it will not, you can't in every aspect work remotely. There are certain jobs where you have to be on present, but you can find in other jobs a good balance of being present maybe certain hours per week, and other weeks you work from home and give flexibility. But you still need the human contact, you need the inspiration you give each other by just talking. That will remain. That is in fact where we are advanced as humans compared to IA and whatever else the technology is giving. So I think the new model, I hope some of the lessons we learned will be integrated in the new business models and will be taken on, hopefully, by some businesses.
In fact, we have a question which basically states, do companies have a duty to safeguard a healthy work-life balance for their employees? So is it a duty now, maybe more than before? Before we used to look at it as, let's say, a plus, you know, an additional bonus. But is it now perhaps something that should be framed as a duty of a company, of an employer?
I think so, yes. I think it should have always been, but yet it's coming out of the forefront. But then don't forget as well, Roberta, we will have now as well the effect that a lot of people will have financial issues. So then again, you will have to see the weighing of really trying to make ends meet and going out to provide for the family, and by finding the work balance, because we still don't know as well the financial issues. We saw, in fact, in the papers now as well, the unemployment rising on the young people. So, I mean, we will still have to see this effect. So how this can act with the work-life balance, one has to see. I think as well, what is changing is where we had in the past few years now, very much the employees really having to say in what jobs and whatever. I think this is changing as well, and it becomes more again an employer market where sort of the employers will look for the right employees, the right skills, will not take on too many people, but try and see maybe as well working with some more subcontracting, not to have this core business too big. So I think we see a lot of these changes. And as I said before, I hope some good lessons will remain, but we'll have to see the impact now as well, mainly financially, it will have now.
Antoniette, your expertise is primarily in the HR domain, let's say. Building on what Helga's saying, the fact that maybe now it's going to shift, the market will shift onto being more of an employer based market, rather driven market, rather than an employee driven. Would you say that perhaps we're going to have less of a demand for foreign employees given the situation?
I do believe we will see changes in the labor market, definitely. Perhaps, not perhaps, I think the experience of the past 1, 2, 3 years has been tough. It's been tough to recruit people. It's been our wages and salaries have gone up tremendously, so they need to ensure productivity. Efficiency has been critical in all of this. Our recruitment bills, not only our wages and salaries, have gone up. People have become more, obviously, as well, more demanding. So perhaps in all of this, there might be more of a reality, all right, coming back to finding a new level playing field. In the past, in the very recent past, obviously, we had a much more diverse, and we were trying to be much more inclusive as a workforce. I think that is good, because the diversity and the inclusion also reflects the people out there. Yeah. And to have a work which reflects the people out there, I think is good, and helps us with creativity and innovation if the environment is right, and if we lead if we lead properly. When trying to speak to colleagues and to other companies, yes, I think the likelihood is we probably, perhaps unfortunately, right, we probably have less non-locals as well now in the workplace. We need to ensure that it continues to be fair and correct. I think there will be a time, and for some certain jobs, which the local people might not really wish to work anymore. So there, I think we will still have the need to go beyond the shores of Malta to have the right employment. I just wanted to make a point as well. I mean, about the question of people looking for more balance and life, the question that we had. What I really have found over the past few years is that in any workplace today, we have many more different generations working. So you could have people who are working well beyond their 60s, so have a lot to give, and even more. And you have younger people, and you have many more different you have more generations working. And there is a big challenge to leaders to be able to motivate all these people, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. And that has been a test to leadership over these years, even if we haven't realized it, but has sometimes sparked turnover, has sparked a lot of things. It has also impacted the bottom line, because if we have turnover, we also most probably we're impacting the bottom line. And definitely with the younger generations, okay, the commitment is there to work, and the people are definitely competent, and they bring a lot to the workplace, but rightfully, they're looking for other things in life as well, different to the previous generations, perhaps because they were taught that way or had different home experiences, okay? So I think with or without COVID, that was happening anyway. The probability is that it might happen more, okay, but people are also worried about their income. So we'll see how that is going to balance out now. We'll have to see how that balances out. So yes, some interesting time, but a lot of responsibility on leaders.
Yes, it's tested our leadership skills to a certain extent, eh?
Yes, yes.
Helga, did you want to add something to that?
No, I think like Antoniette said, I mean, there is the variation in the age groups as well, different things. But the only thing I can say is that what we realized in the companies I'm involved is how quickly the people, how loyal and how quickly the people were supporting the businesses, how adaptable they were. I mean, it always amazes me, the adaptability of the people in Malta. I mean, it is really such a plus, and I think it's overlooked, or we don't really appreciate as much how fast they adapt to things and how quickly they can learn when they have to, because we all learned the Zooms, the Teams and whatever. And I mean, and even on the technology, I mean, they were really fast. So I think that again brought to the forefront as well how as a company you rely on your people. It's your people who make the company, and I think that came to the forefront. But even from the employee side, they realize now how important it is to your employer. So it's not just money, it's as well how you are supported by the businesses, how the businesses will look after you in a crisis like that. So I think even there was coming closer together, where before it was, especially let's say younger employees, it was only maybe the financial gain they got from an employment. From employers as well, we have to try and get the best out of people. This all has changed, and I think there has been, in this crisis now, they have come closer to value each other, which I think is a very positive outcome of that.
Yes, I would agree with that. Catherine, going back on the point, the forecasting about the demand for non-Maltese workers, would you say, or do you think that this would apply to your industry, the construction sector?
I mean, it depends on how construction is going to go in the next few years, but certainly we're heavily reliant on them, and not just from an availability point of view. We've got some very skilled workers from Serbia and Thailand doing metal work, doing you know, so we're, I mean, I would say we're 70% foreign on the construction side here. And they're working hard. They are determined to make it here and to work here and do a good job. And actually, it's an interesting dynamic because I've always worked in very multicultural environments, and I enjoy it. I enjoy the aspect of learning 5 sentences of whatever language it is that they speak, and learning about them and getting them to work with our culture, getting them to adhere to our health and safety laws. But I think in the construction industry, if we're going to grow at the pace that we have been over the last few years, we will need.
Are there any tools or resources or sources of inspiration, let's say, that you're using to guide your decisions that maybe you'd like to share?
Isn't really.
I'm asking you to spill your secrets now.
Perhaps I think Catherine earlier raised the point about, you know, if you were prepared, if you're a company that adopts standards, if you're a company that governs well. I think good governance, not that I can, perhaps, I don't know if it's a tool that I can call here, but if the company, all right, whether it's a listed company or not a non-listed company, but if the company is recognized for its practices, for the standards it upholds and the values that it also engages with, whatever, I think at this point in time, you can really see the result of that. If it was only lip service, then it's another thing. So for me, this is a time where really good governance stands us in good stead, and we should continue to promote. I think it is a tool. But also those companies that have always genuinely worked, like we mentioned before, with respect to CSR, to sustainability. You know, this is a time, okay, when here we're really, you know, showing what we really believe in. And I think that both our employees and our customers also can recognize that as well. So yes, good governance for me is definitely one of the major tools, you know.
Excellent. Also, to build on this point, before COVID hit us, we were already aware of changes that we would have had to adapt to sooner rather than later, but it seems we kept postponing or denying that things had to change. I'm referring particularly to the huge advancements in technology, AI and the Internet of Things, where there are predictions that things are going to change very quickly. And also on a parallel with that, issues pertaining to climate change and sustainability. And there's also talk of a sustainability revolution going on. So my question to you is, to what extent would you say that the decisions you are making now, which have been sort of prompted by COVID, are you framing these decisions within these wider contexts, these wider realities?
I mean, yes. What you said there is absolutely perfect. We all saw that this had to happen. And I think a lot of us were like, oh, that's a very big problem over there. We'll leave it sitting in the corner. And then COVID came, and all of a sudden we, I was going to say a very Irish expression there, but basically we got on with it and did it quite quickly when we needed to. And maybe it always takes something like, you know, a big kick or a knock out of left field to innovate and to push us off our comfort zone. But for me, the biggest learning is as boards, and the IoD is focusing on boards and looking in again and saying, why didn't we do it? Why weren't we focusing on strategy? Why were we maybe nitpicking on an operational item over here instead of spending our time? Like my background, like you said, it's power generation. So we do a huge amount of risk assessments and scenarios, and we'll go to we'll bring in the army and we'll do a proper stress test with media there, and that trains you in a brilliant way to handle the unhandleable. And I think what it does mostly is it takes the emotion out of it, and it makes it very objective. So when you do go looking at these, you know, black swan events or the highly improbable, you don't discard them because you don't like them. You don't say that's never going to happen. You look at these worst case scenarios and you really truly examine them, and you examine what skills you're going to need to get through them, what kind of contingency planning, what resources, what type of financing. And you have that in your back pocket, and you're never going to be able to foresee everything, but at least you've got the trust in yourselves as a board that you've practiced these kind of scenarios together before. And so for me, and the IoD, like, I mean, the courses that you're running now, just to get people who are on boards to refresh their knowledge, to think about strategy, I think that's quite powerful too.
Yeah, I think that, if I can come in there, I think that will really also make a difference to the organizations and the future of the organizations. Having those skills, having that kind of outlook, having that kind of determination, all right, and realizing the responsibilities and the skills necessary will make a big difference to the organizations. So the boards and even the CEOs, senior management who are involved, that is definitely the kind of attitude, the kind of way forward, which will make or break an organization. And regarding the artificial intelligence, the IT, I mean, for someone who is definitely no expert in this area, I, at the same time, realize the need to take the right decisions and the correct decisions based on the right information. And there is no way you can have all that information if you don't have the proper systems, the right IT, the right reporting, the right. So definitely in any area, and also the connectivity within the organization to be able to have access to that information, which is not only limited to the board, not only limited to senior management, but accessibility, obviously, to the right information and whatever across the board. You know, people want to know that they have, and they can make a difference to that. I mean, if you mention sustainability in general, I mean, again, in a number of different organizations that I've had the good fortune, even at this point in time, to be involved somehow or another with, I think what has really encouraged me is that the boards have also, despite the crisis that they are going through, and sometimes without making a lot of noise, supported the society in general. So, you know, they've really looked at, you know, if we really mean what we say, okay, then there are things that we need to do to help society. It's wonderful to see all those organizations who helped with the food bank, who have not even been mentioned, you know, but are there and they stand up for each other, who are active citizens in the world. And I think the boards promoting this and the directors promoting this, all right, should be uploaded, recognized, even if it's in a silent way, because there's a lot of good stuff going on there as well, you know.
Helga, I saw you nodding and agreeing. Because
obviously, Roberta, for me, as president of CORE now, of Corporate Social Responsibility, all that is really confirmed that what I have always been preaching, and I've always been very convinced that it's the right way, and it proved it, because it showed that the companies who really embrace CSR, they're actually winning in this crisis, because they reap the benefits. Like I always said, very, very crudely, that it pays you as a business to be a good corporate citizen, and it proved it. And I think it definitely will be the way forward. I think a lot of companies have realized that now. And again, what Antoniette said is what really surprised me and made me feel good is the way the business community, in the time of this crisis, where they still have to look after their own survival, went out to support the community without being told, without being anybody making effort on their own steam. Everybody, wherever they could, really helped and engaged in the whole community in the nation. And that is, I think, was a brilliant example of deep down how much they really do know about CSR, unknowingly knowing and acting as good corporate citizens. So I think it's very positive. And in fact, I always, Roberta, you and me, we talk often about it, because I said as well, it needs to be brought out a bit more,
Yeah.
Because in the community sometimes the business people are being seen as the one who are just profit driven and whatever. But in this time now, they showed that they really care for their community and they really support it when they had their own big issues to deal with. So I think it is a good case where we now have an advantage in preaching for good CSR and to tell people, look at it. And as we always say as well, when we talk about good corporate social responsibility, it's obviously linked to SDGs, to Sustainable Development Goals. So this climate change and environment is very closely linked to it all, because obviously with whatever you do in your business, be it on resources like energy, water, be it in the people, it's all a holistic philosophy of running a business, of running an ethical business, and good governance comes into that as well. So I think all this in this crisis has really supported this whole philosophy to try for that. And I think it will, and hopefully it will definitely help us in the future to gain more people to come on board and embrace it. But on the other hand as well, on the whole environment and climate change, we have already seen it, like Antoniette and Catherine said, it was already, the marks were there that we have to do the changes. Now what it proves that we can change very fast. We can actually do it very fast. Where before we were maybe half, should we not, and studying it too much, a lot of studies. There we had to act now, and we did it quite well. But it showed as well where we need maybe in future to emphasize that we need more skills, we need more data, we need to use our data and analyze it more. So even maybe in the way our business is done by the employees, we need to bridge the skill gaps more, and it can give this online teaching now, we have learned how we can do it. So I think there will be this, hopefully, leapfrog to the new way of running companies far more skilled and professionally with a new technology. And you have to embrace it, because without it, you will not make it.
Which brings me, in fact, to my last question before we open up for more questions from the audience. If you had to, let's say, identify those key qualities or characteristics which you feel will determine ultimately whether a business will survive this time or whether it might actually not survive, what would you think that those characteristics are?
I think definitely, I mean, one of what came out and will always come out, and it's always been there in business, is leadership, ultimately, but it might be a changed leadership. And I think, as I said, you have to embrace technology. Today, I mean, our way of life, without embracing the technology and having the skills to embrace it, and the knowledge and the continuously learning. I think what is coming to the forefront as well is what we knew yesterday is not what we need to know tomorrow. So it is a continuous learning. We always have this thing, lifelong learning, but it definitely, to everybody in a company, you never have to stop learning. And I think the other thing which is very, very important and coming out more than ever is good communication at all the different levels. If you don't communicate properly with your shareholders, with your directors, with the CEO, with your employees, so this whole, let's say, again, circle has to be done properly in order to be effective and to be successful.
Antoinette.
Yeah, I think obviously all the points mentioned by Helga, which we've discussed, have brought out a lot of the skills, the traits, the behaviors that we would expect. I think, being that this is also an IoD webinar, I think, as we've mentioned earlier, it brings to the forefront the importance of having the right mix on the board and the right skills on the board and the involvement of the board. So a time like this. And I think it's very right and correct that, that the IoD has raised these issues, make it even more critical that we recognize the importance of a strong, good, mixed, board that can definitely help the organization. I think there's a lot to be said for that. Obviously the same for leadership. I also agree with what Helga has been saying, what we've been saying as well, the need to be close to the market, to understand, close to our colleagues, close to other shareholders, close to our employees, because being aware, understanding, and help us to take the quick, important decisions as well that need to be taken. So for me, those are important, and perhaps also to make sure that we have a purpose. We look at our purpose as an organization, which whatever needs to, with all the experience we've had, and that we can excite our people and our stakeholders about that purpose and to go for it. These are the things that I would like to see happening even more.
Excellent. Catherine.
I mean, I absolutely agree with the two ladies. What I will say, because Helga mentioned communication, and what's super important to remember, it's a two-way process. So there's a lot of great ideas and there's a lot of great innovators that are working for us in our companies, and we need to hear them. We need to listen to them, and we need to take these things on board. How many of us have IT departments that have been looking for investments and it maybe never made it to the budget? So I think definitely communication is a two-way process. I think as leaders, we all need to review ourselves and check our own emotional intelligence, check our own humility to keep learning. I have been in situations where people don't want to hear the difficult answers, so they don't ask the difficult questions, and we've got to, because we've got to pull the person out of it and make the problem the problem. And I think if we can do that, and we can build on a trust relationship between the senior management and the board, and then you can take those decisions, and then you can take them comfortable that you know what you don't know, and there's probably something else out there, but at least with what we've got, we're moving forward. So.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing so much. We have a few minutes left, so I'm going to take a few questions from our participants. We have Mark, who's asking, is a COVID-like reaction appropriate to address climate change? I think this is a very pertinent question, and if I am not mistaken, there was also a Love Malta survey which asked participants about this. So do you feel that in relation to climate change, we would need to consider measures similar to those that we have had to accept because of COVID?
It will certainly take some adjusting, definitely. I mean, less traffic on the roads. Will people be ready? This is the values we spoke about before, to find other means of traveling, staying at home, doing things. So it will need a lot of adjustment. But having seen how quickly, I don't know if that's the right word, but the environment has taken, how it's benefited from all this. It really makes you want to do something as well. We even need to look after this for our children, for future generations. And it is as if our environment was speaking to us and has shown us, that if we take care of it, it will it will respond. So yes, I think some measures have to be taken. Obviously, there are going to be some people who will be impacted by this, even business providers who provide certain services and might have to reshift their own business to be able to do that. So I'm sure there will be providers, related to traffic, for just one instance, or any other thing. So there will be all sides pushing as well. So even the direction of the authorities in the sky will also be important, and beyond the local shores as well. So yes, I hope there will be. I would like to think that we can have a better, more sustainable environment.
Another question from Juanita this time. Given the Maltese entrepreneurial spirit, shouldn't there be some initiatives for young people to come up with some new ideas for business? I don't know who'd like to take this.
I Yeah, okay, absolutely. I do think things exist as well, though. I've certainly been on previous IoD talks where I think, Roberta, you've been present, and there has been initiatives and think tanks. I think there's one in Valletta. And I think, you know, ultimately, human beings, we're like this. If we want something badly, we will get it. And if you are an innovator, you will innovate and you will find your way. So if there's things like the IoD and other organizations like that these people can reach. And then there's also the sponsorship of various entrepreneur, you know, I can't remember who sponsors it, so maybe somebody else might say that, but there is prizes given out every year for young entrepreneurs, and maybe it needs to be expanded, but I certainly think if good ideas are brought forward, and Malta is small, so actually businessmen and women are, you can find them. You can actually come forward and find them. So I think, yes, definitely to be encouraged. And I think, yes, it's possible in Malta.
Excellent, thank you. I'm very aware of the fact that we are beyond our 59 minutes. So I'm going to take the last question. It's from Edwin. Maybe you can take this, Helga. Are quick decisions less considered decisions?
I mean, look, that we had to, at the crisis, we had to take this decision, but it showed us as well that in order for the future, where we have to take decisions maybe faster, in order to do it, we need to be able to analyze our data better. So it means as well that we need the skill level of people we have in our companies and whatever. It needs to be much more, again, technology driven to analyze the data we have available, because it is there, but to have the analytical minds in order to support our decisions better with facts. At the moment, I think it showed us clearly as well where we lack maybe certain skills. But definitely, I think we need to learn to take decisions faster. I mean, in the past, there were always too much studies, too much pro and con. I think, and it showed in business as well, sometimes when you take a bit the risk, a certain risk, you need to take that in order to take the decision at the right time, fast enough.
Excellent. So just very quick final reflections. If you had to pick one thing that you would like our audience to remember from everything that we've said, Helga?
No, I mean, I think one of the questions actually which came, and we didn't have maybe too much time, what I would like to look forward as well is to get far more the young people, our young minds involved in all the processes. Now, be it in all the institutions, let's say, for example, like the chamber, let's get the young entrepreneurs closer to our established businesses, get this mentoring process, get their new creativity, and they learn from our experiences. I think we need to enhance that far more because it is something we have here in Malta, and we should use it much better and embrace it much more.
Catherine, your final reflections?
I mean, for me, the way I look at it is like hope isn't a strategy. So I think we have to put in the hard yards now. We have to look deep within our own organizations and companies and design our way out of this. Yeah.
Thank you. And coming to you, Antoniette, for your final reflection, your final comment.
Yeah, I think, again, very much aligned. But for me, I think we've always said change is the only constant. And I think we're here, we know it is, and it's happening much faster. But what perhaps we need to realize more is that we even need to change the way we deal with change. Old tactics, old ways of doing things also need to change. So the agility, the skills, the competences, the hope, so even dealing with change needs to change as well, you know. And that for me is really this coming out.
Thank you. That's certainly food for thought. Thank you to the three of you. Thank you for making time. I know you're all extremely busy, especially at this time. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, your experience, your insights, your predictions for the future. I do hope we come together as often as we can to share knowledge, to share ideas, and to forge a way ahead together. Thank you so much to all of our participants, and please do reach out to the IoD if you have any questions, suggestions, and we look forward to welcoming you to the next edition of 859. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberta. Thank you, IoD. Thank you.